Hey everyone, this is Jerry Hall with NCSI bringing you a video today on how to configure approval delegation in the Ivanti Service Manager tool. From time to time, employees are out of the office for many different reasons, and having the ability to assign an approval delegate will help minimize those approval workflow bottlenecks. At the end of this configuration, these key features will be available. Analysts can set the delegate for the employee through the back end. Employees can submit a request to automatically set their delegate. Delegate can be set permanently or for a specified time frame. Delegates can be set for the future. So for example, if it's Wednesday and I want to set my delegate next Monday, I can do that. Delegates will be notified when they are set as a delegate and when they are removed as a delegate. While as a delegate, both the delegate and the original owner are going to receive the approval notifications, and both can act on those approvals. And finally, we're going to have a scheduled nightly run to remove temporary delegates if the time expires. All right, well, let's get into the configuration. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create two supporting business objects, one for delegate status and one for delegate type. They're just two straight business objects with one extra field. And I've already created those. I'm going to show you those two business objects in the pick list that are behind them. I'm going to head over to the admin UI. We have our delegate status. Fields, we're just adding delegate status, which is a text 32 field. You can go ahead and create a form for it. I like to write justify mine. And then create a list. And set those up however you want to. And then I also created the layout just in case you wanted to add this to a role so that they can manage it from the front end instead of the admin UI. Same thing on delegate type, and remember to set that default form. So we have our fields, delegate type, text 32, created the form, created the list, and also created the layout. Again, so you can add that to roles if you wanted to manage it from the front end. Once those two business objects are created, we're going to go over and create a pick list. And you'll notice that I like to put the prefix of usually the customer, but because this is universal, I'm just using underscore. This helps because it moves a lot of things to the top of the list or the bottom of the list, makes them easier to find, and they're grouped together. So we have delegate status. We have two values, active and inactive. And then delegate type. Our values are permanent and temporary. Okay, next thing we need to do is we're going to jump over to the composite contact business object, and we're going to create about 10 fields over there. So I'm going to go ahead and create those fields, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, I went ahead and created those fields. There was 10 fields here on the composite contact business object. We'll go through each one of those fields. So I have underscore delegate, which is a Unicode text, 100 characters, validated by the contacts and contact store. I have delegate display name, Unicode text 100. Delegate email, Unicode text 255 characters. Delegate from, which is just a straight date field. Delegate rec ID, just a text 32 field. Delegate status, text 32, validated against the pick list we created earlier, delegate status.pl. Delegate 2, just a straight date field. Delegate type, text 32, validated against the delegate type pick list we created earlier. We have inactive delegate display name, Unicode text 100. And finally, inactive delegate email, Unicode text 255 characters. Okay, the next step is we need to go over to the employee business object. So we can go ahead and close this for now. And we're going to open up the employee business object, and we need to create some editing rules. Head over here, business rules, editing rules, and we need to create two sets of editing rules, one for when the delegate changes, and then also when the delegate status changes. I'm going to go ahead and create those editing rules, and I'll show you the end product. Okay, I went ahead and created those editing rules. So we have whenever delegate is changed, we have a set, and then whenever delegate status is changed, we have a set. So we'll go through each one. So when the delegate changes, we're going to set that display name, and that'll be just to other object display name. Delegate email, whenever delegate is changed, other object primary email. Delegate rec ID, going to be other object rec ID. The inactive delegate display name. So if the delegate is null or empty, then we're going to use the delegate display name. Otherwise than that, we want to use the inactive delegate display name. And we need these fields so when the delegate is set to inactive, it wipes out the value, but we need to have it stored on the side so that we can use it for email communications. Yeah. Okay, and then the last one under when delegate is changed, we're going to set the delegate email. If delegate is not null or empty, then delegate email, else inactive delegate email. Okay, our second set is based on whenever the delegate status is changed. So again, we're going to set the delegate. We want to null that out if it's inactive, right? Go ahead and save that. And then we have delegate email. So if delegate status is equal to inactive, then null, else delegate email. Delegate from. If delegate status is equal to inactive, then null, else delegate from. Same rule on delegate to. If delegate status is equal to inactive, then null, else delegate to. Delegate type. If delegate status is equal to inactive, then null, else delegate type. And inactive delegate display name. If delegate status is equal to active, then delegate display name, else inactive delegate display name. And finally, inactive delegate email. If delegate status is equal to active, then delegate email, else inactive delegate email. Those are our editing rules that we need for here. Next thing we need to do is we're going to create a couple triggered actions to send notifications to the delegate when they are set or unset. I'll go ahead and create those two actions and I'll show you the end result. Okay, we now have those two triggered actions. So we have a notify delegate when active and notify delegate when inactive. So for the delegate, when active, is based on whenever the delegate status is updated to active. We're going to do a send email action. And then you can fill in the values that you need to, but we need to have the to be delegate email, and we're going to CC the original owner. And then a subject line, and then whatever verbiage you want to put in for the body of your email. I have this one that I use, but you can certainly put anything in there that you want to. So that's for the active, and then we're doing the same thing on inactive. So whenever the delegate status is changed to inactive, we're going to send an email. And again, you can configure that email how you want. We just want to make sure that it goes to the delegate email and to the primary email of the user that had set that delegate and removed it. Again, the verbiage can be whatever you want. Okay, now that we have those two triggered rules, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to forms and we're going to create a new form for the delegate details. I'll go ahead and create that form and I'll show you the end result. Okay, now I have my form. So as you can see, we have the delegate status, the delegate, We're going to just show their display name and email, delegate type, delegate from, delegate to. We do have some rules on here that we have to account for. So our delegate and delegate type are both required whenever, wrong field. Delegate type is required when delegate status is equal to active. Delegate type, same required rule when delegate status is equal to active. Our delegate from and delegate to have required and visibility rules based on delegate type equaling temporary. That's the required rule, and that's the visibility rule. Again, same on the delegate to. Delegate type equals temporary. Visibility, delegate type equals temporary. Now that we have our form, we're going to head back over to employee here, and we're going to go to layouts, and we're going to add this to a layout. So I'm going to do the administrator layout for now. We can go into form view. We're going to add a child panel. We'll just call that delegate. Relationship will be to itself since we created those fields in the employee view. And then we need to select our form, which is our form that we just created. Mine will be delegate details.form. And then I'm just going to move that up on the list here, put that right after roles, and go ahead and save. Okay, now the next step we need to take is we need to create some fields on the service request business object. Like I mentioned, users are going to be able to submit these through the service catalog through a request offering. So we need to grab those fields from the offering, put them on the service request business object so that we can use them in other places. So I'm going to go ahead and create, I think there's about 8 fields here, so I'll go ahead and create those fields and I'll show you the end product. Okay, now I have my fields that I created on service request. We'll go through each one of those. So we have our underscore delegate, which is a Unicode text 100. And again, I'm validating with contacts and contact store. Next field is delegate display name, just a Unicode text 100. Delegate email, Unicode text 255. Delegate from, which is a straight date field. Delegate rec ID, which is a text 32 field. Delegate status, which is a text 32 validated against the delegate status PL. Delegate to, which is a straight date field. Delegate type, which is a text 32 validated against the delegate type.pl. And that's all the fields that we need for service requests. Next thing we need to do is we're going to create some quick actions on service requests. So I'll go ahead and open up our quick actions from here. And I'm going to go ahead and create the 2 quick actions that we need, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, I have my 2 quick actions that I created. I like to put them under, depending on what they're being used for. For this one, it's going to be under system. But we have a delegate update from service request active. So the important thing to remember about these 2 actions here that you need to know is that when we go in there and look at it, you'll notice that we're applying this action to FRS composite contract contact. So this is actually the service request associated customer relationship that we need to use. You need to set this first before you start setting the fields. Otherwise than that, once you set it, it's going to wipe out all the fields that you entered. So again, we want to make sure that we set this here so that it's composite contract contact. you'll notice that the field values are top delegate type, top delegate from, top delegate to. Very important that we make sure we get that. Okay, and then for the second one, you can just go ahead and clone this one and then update the values. So we're going to do null for all the values, and then the status will be inactive. So those are the two quick actions that we needed on service request. Okay, the next step that we need to take on this is we're going to create a request offering to handle that assign my delegate. So I'm going to go ahead and create that request offering, and I'll show you the end product. Okay, so I've gone ahead and created that service request offering. So we can go through that offering now. So I have service desk as a service, assign my delegate, automated. We can give that a description, categories, general services for right now. I'm going to hide that price information, delivery information, and it's 1 day. It could take longer depending on when, what they set the delegate type, if it's temporary and maybe it starts in the future. But for the most time, it's always going to happen all the time. So 1 day should be sufficient. Go ahead and go to our design request form. So these are the fields that we need. So I just have a header at the top here for delegate details. And then we have our customer field. So our customer field, we're going to have a default value of primary email. It is going to be validated against the contacts and contact store. Visibility is no. We're just using it because we need to get the delegate, the current delegate, if there is one. It's not required. And the unique ID is Del_customer. Next field we have is a read-only text field. It's a current delegate. And default value, I'm sorry, let me go back to customer. And under this pick list, we also added an additional field for contact delegate. Now on this current delegate, that default expression is going to be triggered on that customer field, and we're going to go ahead and select that value from the side here. We're going to have a visibility rule that says if the current delegate is not empty, then true, else false. And our unique ID is Del_current delegate. Next we have a request type. Visible yes. It's a custom pick list. Add delegate, change delegate, remove delegate. It is always required. And it has a unique ID of Del_request type. Next we have our delegate field. Has a visibility expression of request type equals add delegate or change delegate. It is validated against the contacts and contact store. And it has the same required rule of add delegate or change delegate. Unique ID, Del_delegate. Next field we have is delegate type. Visibility again is based on the request type equal an add delegate or change delegate. We'll have the same required rule. We're using the validated pick list that we created earlier of delegate type.pl. And we have a unique ID of Del_delegate type. Next is our delegate from. And this is just a date field. And the visibility of delegate type equals temporary, and the required rule is the same. Unique ID, Del_delegate from. Then we have delegate to. Again, our required and visibility rules are delegate type equals temporary, and our unique ID is delegate to, Del_delegate to. So that's our form. Then we're going to move over to the workflow. So we have a few blocks in here that we have to account for. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go update the customer delegate information on those service request fields. So we have delegate type, to, from, and who the delegate is. You can see those values here. And we're just grabbing those from the service request templates over here. And we're just dragging those fields in. Next one we go into is a switch, and we need to determine what type of request was it. Was it an add, a change, or a remove? So if it's an add, it's going to go through one path. If it's a change, it's going to go through a separate path. And then if it's default, which would be remove, it'll go through that third path. So in here, we have our exit points of add and change. Request type equals add delegate. Change request type equals change delegate. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we're going to go through the add path. So we have add, goes to temporary or permanent. We have our exit configuration of permanent only, delegate type equal to permanent. And if it's not permanent, then we know it's temporary. If it's permanent, it's going to go to this update delegate active, which we're using a quick action that we created on the service request business object, underscore delegate update from service request active. If it's going to be temporary, then we need to wait for that date. So that from date, we always want it to time out, so our wait condition will be rec ID is empty, because we know that'll never happen. And then once it comes out of that date, it goes in and it'll update the delegate to active. For our request type of change, again, we're going to go to a switch and we're going to look and see if it's temporary or permanent. We'll use the permanent exit point, so delegate type equals permanent. If it is permanent, then we can just go ahead and remove the current delegate if there is one. So that'll go ahead and set it to inactive. And then it'll follow up to the update delegate active. If it is temporary, then again, we need to wait for that from date. Make sure the rec ID is empty is our wait condition, so it never happens. It'll always go to that from date. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the delegate if there is one, and then go ahead and set the new one. So our remove delegate, we're using the underscore delegate update from service request inactive. Once it goes through this path here, the last step it comes in is we're just going to update this request to fulfilled. And then you can set the team and owner however you want. For this example, I'm going to use service desk and self-service as the owner. Status is fulfilled. And then after that, it goes into a stop block, and then that'll be the end of the workflow. Okay, and then our final step is publish action access. And here you can just set the org unit location to any, or you can restrict it however you need to. And then we'll go ahead and publish it, and then we'll save and exit. Okay, now that we have our request offering, we're going to jump back over to the admin UI. I'm just going to go ahead and close this tab here. I'm just going to do a complete refresh. And then we need to create a couple fields on approval vote tracking. I'm just going to go ahead and go to that business object. And then we'll create those two fields. We need one for delegate email and delegate rec ID. Go to here, fields, and I'm going to go ahead and add those two fields, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, I have my two fields now. I have delegate email and delegate rec ID. Okay, so we have our delegate email, which is a Unicode text 255. And then we have our delegate rec ID, which is a text 32. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to add some editing rules. So we'll go ahead and set these up here. And these are going to be when the owner changes, we need to set those two fields. So I'll go ahead and create those two rules, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, I have my two editing rules right here. So I have delegate email. So whenever the owner is changed, we're going to set the delegate email to other object delegate email. And then whenever the owner is changed, we're going to set the delegate rec ID to other object underscore delegate rec ID. So those are the two editing rules that we need. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump over to My Items. And we're going to create a field over here. So this field that we're going to create is going to be the Delegate Rec ID. And it's just a text 32. And then we need to add a business rule, editing rule. And on this one, we're going to say when the owner changes, let's go ahead and set that Delegate Rec ID. And we're going to use an expression for that one. Okay. So if the delegate status is equal to active, then if the parent object type is approval request and the status is pending, then we're going to use the Delegate Rec ID, else no. Okay. Now we're going to do a complete refresh again. And then we're going to head over to the approval vote tracking. And then we want to go to relationships to My Item. And we want to add that field in here to push that value. So we should have Delegate Rec ID going to Delegate Rec ID. Okay. Go ahead and save that relationship change. Okay, next step we need to do is we need to add permissions to My Items for that self-service role, so when they go into self-service, delegates can see those approvals also. So we're going to head over to here, to our roles and permissions. We're going to find our self-service role that we're using. For this one, I'll use mobile. And then we're going to go to object permissions. And then we can go ahead and just search for My Item. And then we're going to add a new permission here. So add a new case. And then that'll be Delegate Rec ID is equal to current. And that'll be equal to our function here, current user rec ID. Save that. Go ahead and update and save. Okay, now that we have that permission set, we need to create a pick list, and we have to get a little creative with this one. So we're going to go ahead to pick lists. And I'm just going to do a refresh at this point. Okay, now that we're refreshed, let's head over to pick lists, and we're going to add a new one. And this one is going to be employee by rec ID. And we're going to use the employee business object. And we're just going to set these fields to display name for now. And go ahead and save that. And then next thing we need to do is we're going to jump back over to My Items. We'll bring up our business objects. My Item. And we need to create a new field over here, and it's going to be validated with that pick list. So we're going to do a text. And this is going to be owner rec ID. Add Unicode text. And 32 is enough because it's a rec ID. And then we're going to validate it against that new pick list we just created, employee by rec ID. And just go ahead, add this field, save. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and do another refresh. And we're going to go back to that pick list. and we're just going to update that. And instead of display name, we're actually going to use rec ID. Go ahead and save that. Like I said, we have to be a little creative there. Ivanti actually does this with one of theirs, I believe it's category, where they use a different pick list and you have to kind of switch between um, whether it's a regular text or Unicode text to get the right pick list. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to my item. And we need to create an editing rule over here. And that editing rule is going to be based on whenever the owner changes. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set that owner rec ID. And we're going to use an expression, or nope, we're just going to say other object. Rec ID. And hit save. Now we have that new editing rule there. Okay, now our next step is we're going to jump over to employee. And we need to create a new relationship over here. And it's going to be to my items. Find it, my item. We'll just give it a name. So from employee, we're creating that new relationship, employee associated FRS my item delegate, and this is going to be 0 or 1 to 0 or many, and we're using that new owner rec ID that we just created and validated against the rec ID. So once we have that relationship created there, then we're going to create a couple quick actions back on my items. So we'll switch over to my items, we'll go to quick actions, and we're going to do 2 quick actions here, one for add and one for remove. I'll go ahead and create those and show you those when they're done. Okay, so I have my 2 quick actions that I needed. So the first one is going to be _update delegate add. It's just an update object. And we're setting the delegate rec ID to the value of the relationship of employee to my items delegate rec ID. You can see that in here. Relationships, employee associated, delegate rec ID. Make sure automatically save changes when action is run. And then you could just clone this, change the name to remove, and just update the value to null. That'll take care of those 2 rules. Now back on employee, we need two new quick actions. So we'll go ahead and do from employee, quick actions. And then we have an add and a remove also from here. So I'll go ahead and create those 2 and I'll show you. Okay, I went ahead and created my 2 quick actions here on the employee object. These are going to both be run for child. So we have add delegate to my items. And we're using that relationship employee to my item delegate. We're going to put a constraint on this. We only want to do those that have a status of pending. And the action to run is update delegate add, which is the quick action that we just created over on my items. And then for the delegate remove, you can just go ahead and clone that initial add delegate to my items and then update the action to run to be delegate remove, update the name, of course, to remove. So again, we can just clone that add delegate to my items and just update it to remove as the action to run and update the name of it. Okay, So the next step that we need to take here is we need to create a workflow on the employee business object. We're going to call this update delegates add, and we're counting for temporary. Save that. And we'll go ahead and add a version. And I'm going to go ahead and create that workflow and show you the end result. Okay, now that we have this workflow set up here, we'll go through the workflow. So our configuration is based on updated, delegate status is equal to active, and delegate type is equal to temporary. We have our start block. We're going to go into a wait block. We're going to wait for the delegate from field. In our wait condition, because we don't ever want it to come out of there, is rec ID is empty, so we know it's always going to come out of the timeout. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just remove any delegates if there's already one set. So that's our quick action that we had here. Remove delegate from my items. And then we're going to go ahead and update our my items with a new delegate, and that's the add delegate to my items. And then our stop block. Go ahead and save that workflow up. And then once you have it saved, go ahead and just publish it. Okay, now that we have that workflow, I'm just going to go ahead and do a refresh. Okay, now that we have that workflow, I just went ahead and did a refresh here. And I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the employee business object. And we need to create a couple triggered actions in here. So from business rules, I'm going to go to triggered action and create a couple triggered actions here for update, add, and remove. So I'll go ahead and create those, and I'll come back and show you the end product. Okay, now I have my two new triggered actions here. So we have underscore update my item delegate add and remove. So we'll look at the add first. So this is based on update of delegate status is being set to active, but we also want to make sure that we're only looking at the ones that have delegate type equals permanent, because we covered temporary in the workflow. And then we're going to do a run for child where you can use a copy of existing and just use the add delegate to my items. And you'll see that configuration here on the next screen. You can go ahead and save that up. And then we have our remove. And that is based on an update of the delegate status to inactive. And again, you can use a copy of the existing and just use the remove delegate from my items. And you'll see that configuration. Go ahead and save those two rules up. Okay. Next thing we need to do is we need to create a search on employee. So we'll go over to search tool, save searches, employee add. And we're going to go ahead and add 3 fields based on employee delegate status, delegate type, and delegate to. And our values are going to be active, temporary, and then we're just going to go into functions, and it'll just be current date. So employee delegate status is active, delegate type is temporary, and delegate to is current date. Go ahead and save that. And we'll call that delegate temporary ends today. Go ahead and save that. Okay, now that we have that saved search, we're going to go ahead and create a scheduled job. And we're going to do this daily. And we'll call this Delegate daily removal. We'll start that at 12, which is the beginning of the day, and we'll give it an hour to run. We'll do that every day. We'll start that today with no end date. Okay. Now we have our scheduled daily to remove those delegates as needed. Okay, next step we need to do is we need to create an action on employee. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a refresh here, close out a couple tabs. We'll go back to the business objects employee. And we'll go to quick actions. And this is just going to be an update object. We'll call that update delegate inactive, and we're just basically setting the delegate status to inactive. Make sure we automatically save changes, category, system, and go ahead and save. Okay, now the final step that we have is we need to create a workflow. This is going to be for scheduled entry. We'll call this delegate daily removal check. Save that up. We'll add a version, and I'll go ahead and configure that. And we went ahead and added that version, and we're just going to do configuration. And that's going to be our delegate daily removal. And then we're going to have a start, run for search, and a stop. Connect our blocks. And our first one is going to be search delegates for removal. And that's going to be based on our search that we just created. And in here, we're going to remove delegates from my items. Okay. And the second one is going to be search delegate expired inactive. Again, based on that same search, this time we're going to do update delegates to inactive into our stop. Go ahead and save that workflow. We'll go back and we'll publish it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to open up the approval vote tracking business object. Click on quick actions, which will open up our quick actions here. And then we just need to update whatever emails that you want the delegate to receive. Just add them to the CC field. So I'll go ahead and edit here. I'm going to add CC. And then I'll just grab the delegate email from the side here and save. Go ahead and save that up. And again, you can do that for whatever emails that you want delegation to get those emails for. And that's it for that. And that's it. That's the final step. So this is the complete configuration from start to finish. If you follow this video to the letter, you will end up with the same configuration. As always, make sure you put this into your staging environment and test it first. Thank you for watching this video. This is Jerry Hall with NCSI signing off.